Hi Flashes, today we are going to be talking about surface area and volume of rectangular prisms and cube. So when we say a rectangular prism or a cube, it's pretty much just talking about a figure that's in the shape of a box. So you have three measurements that you'll have to know. So the length, so think about the base. So the base of a rectangular prism is just a rectangle. So notice how you're still going to have your length and your width. And the only thing that's different now is since this is a 3D figure, you just need to know the height of it. So you need to know the length, the width, and the height. So these are three numbers that you need to know. Now, when we open up this figure and lay it down flat on a two-dimensional plane, that just means that your figure is going to look like this. And as you guys can see, we labeled it for you. So you have the bottom and the top here. So the bottom, if you were to open up the figure and lay it down flat, your sides are still going to be attached to the bottom, as well as the front and the back is still going to be attached to the bottom. So as you guys can see over here, your bottom is attached to the sides and the front and the back. And then your top just falls down with one of the sides, or you can have it attached to the front and the back as well. Okay? So I'm going to teach you guys how to find the surface area of the figure from a net, but there's also a formula that will be given to you guys that you can use as well. So we're just going to do both ways so that you guys can practice both ways, okay? The main thing that you guys need to know, the difference between surface area and volume. So surface area is talking about the outside of the shape. So if we have this box here, and I said, how much wrapping paper would you need to cover the box? That's talking about surface area, okay? And then when we flip it over to the back side with volume, that's talking about how much space goes on the inside. So if I were to say, how much tissue paper can you fit on the inside, you would want to find the volume. So surface area is talking about the outside of the shape, volume is talking about the inside. Okay. So let's go ahead and start finding surface area of each prism, okay? And I want us to do the net first. All right. So you are just going to draw your net the same way like this, okay? So we have the bottom, you have your sides, and the front and the back. And then we'll put the top over here. And if you want to label these, you are more than welcome to do so, if that helps you. So when you guys get done, your surface area of the box should look something like this. Okay, so here's what you will do to find the surface area from a net. So you are going to have to put measurements all around this figure down here because, as you guys know, if we have a rectangular prism, all of our shapes down here are rectangles. Okay, so the bottom is a rectangle, front and back are rectangles, sides are rectangles, and the top is a rectangle. So I know how to find area of a rectangle, correct? Area of a rectangle is just taking length times width. So if I wanted to find the surface area of this figure, it's pretty much like a complex figure. So I'm just going to find the area of each rectangle. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 rectangles. So I'm going to find the area of each of them. And then as we know, for a complex figure, once we figure out the area of all of them, we're just going to add all of them together. Okay, so let's do that. So let's start with the bottom. So I need to figure out what dimensions go with the bottom. Well, looking at our bottom here, it's this rectangle, and notice how our length is 13 and the width is 5. So when I go to label this, I'm going to have a length of 13 and a width of 5. And sometimes I put these all around. So if you guys want to put like 13 up here and 5 over here, that is perfectly fine as well. So 13 and 5. And now we have the dimensions of the bottom. And think about, to save us some time here, if the bottom of the box has dimensions 13 by 5, what other part of the box is going to have dimensions of 13 by 5 as well? If you guys said the top, that's correct. Your bottom and the top are going to have the same exact dimensions. So if you had the bottom as 13 by 5, your top is also going to be a 13 by 5. And again, if you want to put the measurements all the way around, you're more than welcome to do so. All right, so now let's move on to the sides. So your sides over here. So if I were to outline the side and I were to figure out what these measurements are, notice how the bottom down here is 5 and the height of it is 6. So my two dimensions that go with the sides are 5 and 6. Now notice when you go to label these on your side, notice how we already have 5s here. So I want to label this one down here, if it's a 5 by 6, I want to label this one with a 6. Okay, so that was one side. And again, if one side has dimensions 5 by 6, that means that your other side is also going to have dimensions by 5 by 6. So again, we already have our 5s over here, so now I just need to put on my 6s. All right, so we have figured out the dimensions of the top and the bottom, and we have figured out the dimensions of the sides. So now we just need to figure out the dimensions of the front and the back. So notice I always like to trace the front and the back so that then I can visualize what numbers go with each. So as you guys can see, we know that one measurement is going to be 13, which is the length down here at the bottom. But I need to know for the front and the back, what is this measurement? Well, if you guys go over here to the side, this line, the height of it was 6. So that means that this line over here is also going to be 6. So my measurements of the front and the back are going to be 13 by 6. So the front and the back on our picture is labeled the F and B here. Notice how we already have 13 here. So that just means that my side over here has to be 6. And it's going to be 13 over here. And then again, your front and the back are going to have the same measurement, so we just need to label the back as well. So this had a measurement of 13, so my sides will be 6s. And that is it. So that's all of the measurements. So now we can go ahead and start finding the area. One thing that you guys can do when you finish labeling your measurements is checking your diagram to see if everything matches up. So if you were to take your pen and go up and down right here between the back, the bottom, and the front, all of your lengths should be the same. So are all the lengths the same? Yeah, they're all 13, so we know we did that correctly. When we go from left to right, again, all of these lengths should be the same. So as you guys can notice, they are all 5, so that means that we did those correctly. And then every corner, so every corner that you see should be labeled by 6s. And as you guys can see, we did. So we know that we did those correctly. Okay, so the last thing we have to do now is just find the area. So as you guys know, we talked about finding the area of rectangles. We're just taking length times width. So let's do the bottom first. So 13 times 5 is 65. And I'm just going to put all of the measurements off here to the side. So we did the bottom, and remember the bottom is going to have the same area as the top. So if the bottom had an area of 65, that means that the top is also going to have measurement of 65. So I'm just going to put another 65 right below it. Okay. So that took care of the bottom and the top here. So now let's go to the two sides. So as you guys can see, our sides are 5 by 6s. So to find the area, we're just going to take 5 by 6, and 5 times 6 gives us 30. And remember that 30 is just talking about one side, so we need the other side as well. And since they're the same measurement, we know that it's going to be the same units. So 5 by 6 gives us another 30. So I'm just going to rewrite these in so you guys know where these numbers came from. Okay, so we have the top and the bottom that had areas of 65. We have the two sides that have areas of 30. So last step is to find the areas of the front and the back. And remember, your front and the back had measurements of 13 by 6. So we're just going to take 13 times 6 2 times for the front and the back. And that will give us 78. All right, right, so now that we have the area of all the rectangles, we can now just add them together and that will become our answer. So 65 plus 65 plus 30 plus 30 plus 78 plus 78 gives us a total of 346. And when you're talking about surface area, notice how area is in the word. Your units are going to be squared. So up here in the directions, it says that our dimensions are in feet. So it'll be 346 square feet. So as you guys can see, the net does kind of take a while to figure out the area, okay? But if this were to come up on iLearn, I just want you guys to know how you can find the area from the net, okay? The other way to do it, that is a little bit quicker, and I'm going to have you guys do it both ways, so you guys do need to know how to do it this way, okay, is finding the surface area from the formula up here at the top, okay? So I'm just going to rewrite the formula down here. So it was surface area equals 2LW plus 2HW plus 2LH. So the L is talking about your length, the W is talking about your width, and your H is talking about your height. So all that we need to do is just plug those numbers into the formula and then just solve like normal. So looking at your picture up here, the rectangular prism, we said that 13 was the length, 5 was the width, and 6 was your height. So all that I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug those numbers into my formula and then solve it. And I like to put parentheses around all of these, so that just reminds us that we are multiplying. Okay, so we have the 2. L is length, which was 13, times W, which was 5, plus, we have another 2. Height is 6. Width is 5. So as you guys can see, all I'm doing is I'm just plugging in the numbers into the formula based off the rectangular prism. And then the last one here, we have 2 times L, which was 13, and H, which was 6. All right, so all we need to do now is simplify this. So I always simplify it by multiplying the 3 sets first, and then I add them lastly. Because thinking of PEMDAS, remember we have to multiply before we add. So look at the first set. We just have 2 times 13 times 5, and that is 130. Okay, then move on to the second set and bring down the plus sign. We have 2 times 6 times 5, and that is 60. Then we have 2 times 13 times 6, and that gives us 156. So then your last step from the formula is just adding all of these numbers together, and we should get what we got from the net. So let's see. If we were to take 130 plus 60 plus 156, notice how we did get that 346 again. So yes, the formula is a lot easier. Notice how it took us less time to get that, okay? But you are expected to know how to do both, okay? All right, and then anytime that it says just like 50% of the surface area, of means multiply. So just remember 50%, you just change it to a decimal first. So 50% as a decimal, move it to the left 2 times is 0.50. So you would just take 0.50 times our surface area that we got, and you would get 176.46. All right, so let's try one more. Okay, again, we're going to do it both ways because you are expected to know both ways. So this one, it is still classified as a rectangular prism, but we call it a cube because all of your sides are the same measurement, so they're all 5s. Okay, so when you have the same measurements, that just means that you have squares everywhere. So you have a cube because all of your measurements are the same, which are 5s. All right, so let's go ahead and draw the net. So your net is still going to look very similar to this one, but instead of rectangles, you're just going to have squares. And I'm not going to label this one with the top and bottom and sides. I'm just going to leave it like that. So again, it's very similar to this in the same shape, but instead of rectangles, they are just squares. Now a cube is a lot easier to label all of your numbers on the squares because notice how they're all just fives. So remember how over here I said that when you go up and down and left and right in your corners, they all should be the same. So you can literally just go in and fill in all of these lines with fives. Because like I said, they're all going to be the same. All right, so let's go ahead and find the surface area. And again, this one's going to be a lot easier than the rectangular prism because notice how if we find the area of all of our squares, they're all going to equal each other, correct? Because if I were to take 5 times 5, that's 25. 5 times 5 is 25. So all of these areas are going to have an area of 25. Because again, 5 times 5, length times width, gives us 25. So a couple ways we can do this is we can just add 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25, or we can just take 25 times 6 and that will give us the same answer. And I got 6 by adding up all the sides. There are 6 sides to a cube. All of them had an area of 25, so you can just take 25 times 6 to get us an area, surface area of 150. And that's it, okay? So again, let's just practice the formula as well, okay? So you always start with the formula, so you just write it out. So 2LW, 2HW, 2LH. This will be given to you guys on your quiz and test, so you don't have to memorize it. Then you just start substituting in your numbers. So looking at the cube, 5 is L, 5 is W, and 5 is H. So every time you're plugging in numbers into the variables, they're just going to be 5 every time. And again, I put parentheses around these because that just reminds us that we are multiplying, okay? And the easiest way to do this is to multiply the 3 sets first. So I like to underline them so that I can see them a little bit better. So we are going to multiply those numbers first, and then we will add those 3 numbers together. So again, all of these 3 sets, we're just taking 2 times 5 times 5, and that gives us 50. So then your last thing that you'll have to do is just take 50 plus 50 plus 50, and notice how that is going to give us the 150 square feet again. All right, last thing is taking 25% of the surface area. So 25% as a decimal is 0.25. Of means multiply, and then we're going to take that times the 150. So 25% of 150 is just 37.5. All right, so that is surface area. So remember, surface area is talking about the outside of the shape. So like think of like wrapping paper, wrapping the boxes up. So that's talking about how much area, surface area you need on the outside. And you can find it by its net or by the formula. Backside, we are going to talk about volume. And this volume formula is going to be given to you guys. You guys don't have to memorize it, okay? But the volume formula of a rectangular prism is just volume equals length times width times height. So all that we are going to do is multiply all the numbers together on our pictures here, and then just get the area. So these ones are actually a lot easier compared to surface area. Okay, so rewrite down the formula. So volume equals length times width times height. Substitute, we're just going to substitute our numbers into the formula. So sometimes I like to label them up here just to help us out. So your length would be 13, so I'm going to plug in 13 for L. Your width is 5, so I'm going to plug in 5 for W. And your height is 6, so I'm going to plug in 6 for H. So all we have to do to find the volume, take 13 times 5 times 6, and that gives us 390. And again, guys, when we're talking about volume, that is talking about the inside of the shape, okay? So how much space is on the inside. So if this is feet, if we're talking about volume now, notice how we're multiplying 3 numbers, so it'll be feet times feet times feet. So it's not going to be feet squared anymore, it's going to be feet cubed, so cubic feet. All right, and then the last one here, so 2/5 of the volume. So you just take 2/5 times 390, and you get 156. Because of means multiplied. All right, so then the last one here. So again, volume formula, we're trying to figure out the amount of space on the inside of the object here. The volume formula of a rectangular prism or a cube is just length times width times height. Remember, a cube, all of your measurements are going to be the same. So when you plug in your numbers here, it's just going to be 12 times 12 times 12. And if I were to plug that in my calculator, 12 times 12 times 12 is 1728. And again, this is volume. You're multiplying 3 numbers, so it's not feet squared anymore. It's going to be feet cubed. All right, and then the last one, so 70% of the volume, 70% as a decimal is 0.70. Of means multiply, and we're just going to take it of the volume, so 0.70 times 1728 is 1209.6. All right, so some key things to take away from today's lesson. Again, surface area is talking about the outside of the shape, the amount of space on the outside, so think of like wrapping paper. And then volume is the amount of space on the inside. Volume, we give you a formula, and all you have to do is just substitute the numbers in and then multiply them. Surface area, there's 2 different ways to find surface area. One way is by using the nets and then finding the area of each of the rectangles or squares and adding up all the areas together. Or the second way was to use the formula, substitute the numbers into the formula, and then simplify it. Either way, you'll still get the same answer. So please let your teacher know if you have any questions, but that's the end of today's lesson.